What's going on, everybody? This is The Avenue, and here's my take on the issue of black male and female relationships, specifically in response to the ABC News Nightline specials regarding quote-unquote successful black women and their inability to find quote-unquote good black men. Now, I'm not going to break down either of the Nightline specials because several people have done so already and they've done good jobs of it. But what I'm going to do is give my opinion on black women's participation in these shows, as well as my take on why 70% are single and why 42% of quote-unquote successful black women have never been married. First off, I'm deeply offended that black women will once again participate in the American media's attempt to disparage the image of black men. I'm offended that 40 years after COINTELPRO and the feminist movement, black women are still participating in the good old divide and conquer game. As educated as many of you claim to be, I can't understand why you can't see this bullshit for what it really is. Again, I'm offended, and black women should be ashamed of themselves. The reality of this whole situation is that many black women's chickens are coming home to roost, and many of you can't handle it, so you've gone into denial. After 30 years of you gotta have a job if you want to be with me, what have you done for me lately, I don't want no scrubs, I'm independent, bills, pay my bills, where them dollars at, I can do bad all by myself, I'm trying to get mine, and all these other stank bitch anthems and mantras that many of you have rallied behind, you've realized that it was all bullshit, and now you're ready to be quote-unquote good girls. But for decades, your feet and your heads have been in a constant competition over which one fits better in your asses. Now, many of you have spent your young adult years whoring yourselves out for money, status, or just for the fuck of it, securing the false assumption that some quote-unquote good black man would come along and play Captain Save-A-Ho despite all of the baggage that you've accumulated. Many of you have spent your youth displaying sheer arrogance and conceit, shooting down and disrespecting decent black men in your pursuit of this perverted vision of an ideal black man. While I'm not saying that black men aren't faultless, I am saying that black women individually and collectively have not stepped up to the plate to acknowledge their role in this supposed crisis. Since you won't acknowledge it, I will. When I saw the commercial for the ABC News Nightline Face-Off in Atlanta, they started it off with, "Welcome to Hotlanta, the capital of beautiful, professional, single black women." What they showed, however, were lines and lines of middle-aged, overweight black women. One overweight black woman said, "Waiting for that man." Later on, the reporter references Beyonce and says that her lyrics have become an anthem for young black women everywhere, after which they juxtaposed the clips of Beyonce's slender physique in the Single Ladies music video to that of the overweight middle-aged women in line for the ABC News Nightline special. When the black woman exclaimed, "Waiting for that man," I could have been mean and said, "Your fat asses are going to keep waiting if you don't get in shape." But the producers and editors of this segment already clowned them, and the black women didn't even realize it. I realized it, and the contradiction that was this 60 seconds of footage says it all. Now, the last time that I saw a long line of overweight 30-ish and 40-ish black women like this was on a Friday night back in 1996 when the movie Waiting to Exhale premiered. These complaints about not finding good black men are coming from women who should have been married decades ago. So now what happened that 14 years after Waiting to Exhale, these women are still talking this same shit? Well, here's my take on it. I'll start off with my experience in college back in the mid-90s. Now, I grew up on the West Coast and I moved down south to go to college. When I started college, Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity ran the yard. Now, let me say that I'm not a hater by any definition of the word, and I give props where props are due. And with that said, the Noops ran the yard. I didn't know anything about black Greek fraternities because they're not that big of a deal on the West Coast, whereas black people in the South are treated like religion. Everybody wanted to be a Kappa, and when I started college, I considered joining Kappa Alpha Psi because they were really the only black Greek fraternity on campus that was really doing anything. However, I saw some things that the Kappas did that turned me off from joining. The first thing that turned me off was the first time that I saw a KSI probate show. Now, the Kappas have a part of their routine where they take off their shirts, take out a wad of $1 bills, and make it rain, after which they get down on their knees and lick a pie dish filled with whipped cream. When the Noops did this part of the routine, the young women in the audience went crazy. I mean, just, "Oh, he's so fine, that's my baby," and all that shit. I, however, looked at it in disgust. Disgust for the fact that these brothers let them tell her we're the biggest players on campus. However, they were putting out this message to the black women on campus that, "Hey, get with a Noop, baby, and I'll eat your pussy and spend money on you." Now, I dated several women in college who said the Kappas did exactly that. Now, me being a West Coast player, I didn't know what part of the game this was. I don't know what they call a man who eats pussy and spends money on females in the South, but on the West Coast, we call those guys tricks. And in the Bay, we call them Captain Save-A-Ho. Again, no disrespect to KSI as a whole, but this is what this particular chapter did. The other thing that turned me off about the KSI chapter at my school was that there were a lot of dudes in that chapter who were lying to kick it. I knew a lot of females on the yard, and many of them would tell me and my friends how these dudes were fucking over their financial aid money and in some cases selling dope in order to buy expensive cars and clothes so that they could maintain the image of being a baller. And whether this was true or not, the end result spoke for itself, and that was that the women on the campus ate that shit up. So much so, in fact, that any brother who wasn't a Kappa was treated like a second-class citizen. I remember my friends going to functions and girls would walk up to them and ask them flat out, "Are you a noob? Are you a Kappa?" And when my friends said no, the disrespectful little bitches would put their hands in my friends' faces, roll their eyes, and walk off like my friends weren't shit. If you were in a fraternity at my school, you got played, but if you were a Kappa, you could have any bitch you wanted any time. I knew dudes who were lame as hell, ugly as hell, and didn't get any action on the yard, but as soon as they got down with the noobs, the females started acting brand new and were hurling the pussy at guys who they wouldn't have given the time of day to a month earlier. This had a negative effect on the black student population at my school because what happened next was that a lot of dudes started doing some real fake-ass shit to get play from the females. You had lame-ass niggas who would lie and say that they were Kappas just to get a girl to have sex with them. You had guys who joined KA's side not for the love of the fraternity, but for the love of pussy. I remember a friend of mine's introducing me to one of his buddies from his hometown, and when my friend asked the guy what he was going to pledge, the guy said he was pledging new. When we asked him why, he said flat out, "Man, they got all the hoes." The other group of brothers who got tons of play due to their status with a basketball team. It was the hope of many college girls to get with a hoop player. What was funny was that for a group of women who were always talking about how they wanted nice guys who were polite and respectful, many of the basketball players were major assholes. I mean, cocky, arrogant, immature, thuggish, and incredibly whorish. I mean, these dudes fucked anything and everything, but that didn't matter to the sisters. Their hope was to get with an NCAA athlete and whip that good pussy on him in order to get wifed up by junior year when he attempts to go pro, or by graduation if he's one of the few brothers who's smart enough to get a degree before going pro. At the very least, she could get knocked up by a ball player, and once he makes the NBA draft and goes pro, she's set for the next 18 years of her life. Now, while it wasn't difficult for a chick to get knocked up by a ball player, it was a lot easier to get burned by one, and that happened to several chicks on the yard. Now, I could really bust some trifling bitches out right now, but I'm going to keep it cool. The next group of brothers who got major play were the thug niggas. These were the niggas who weren't in school. Many were from these girls' old neighborhoods or hometowns. Many of these dudes had kids they weren't taking care of. A lot of these niggas sold dope. Many of them were little false flag and wannabe gangbangers who saw colors, boys in the hood, and menace to society, and figured that being a hoodlum was going to get them play from the females. Now, to all of you young cats who are in college now, if you're interested in a girl who's on that "I like thug niggas" bullshit, leave that bitch alone, man. That's a childish bitch who's trying to experience a holdover from high school. This is the girl who wanted to date the little thug niggas when she was in high school, but either she came from a family who didn't play that shit, or she was afraid of getting her ass kicked by the little ghetto hood rats who were also fucking these niggas. These were also the girls who got their cherries popped by some little ugly-ass dope dealer back in high school, and now she's turned out because the Rudy Poop nigga dogged her and he isn't fucking with her anymore. Now that she's in college and she's away from her parents and the little hood rats who would have sliced her with a box cutter for fucking with their thug-ass baby daddy, now she's ready to act a fucking fool. As DJ Quick said, she graduated, got some thug dick, and flipped. Now, the attitudes and the reactions from the black women on campus is what made the atmosphere so negative. Of all the females on the yard, the AKAs were the worst ones when it came to the gold digger mentality. Now, no disrespect to that sorority as a whole, because I dated AKAs from other schools, and while some of them were foul, some of them were decent black women. The problem that most of the brothers had with this particular chapter was that these girls fit the stereotypes of AKAs to a T. You know, the stuck-up, light-skinned, or fair-skinned gold digger who was incredibly shallow, incredibly fake, and incredibly contradictory. By and large, these were very attractive, very intelligent black women who were very active on campus. However, they were also very snide and disrespectful to guys who didn't meet their little superficial status quo. Now, what was funny was that for a group of young women who acted as if their shit smelled like Baskin and Robbins ice cream, these girls were some of the biggest sluts on campus. That isn't to say that there weren't any non-Greek black women or women in other sororities like Delta Sigma Theta, Zeta Phi Beta, or Sigma Gamma Rho who weren't on some other shit. But what distinguished the AKAs from everyone else was the fact that they went out of their way to portray this image that they were the standard of black women. Again, the attitudes and the reaction from the black women on campus is what made the atmosphere so negative.